So my name is Ogan Gurel. Welcome to Strategic Creativity for Innovation. This is lecture number one. We will have 12 lectures and 3 sessions for student presentations at the end of the course. And this is a pleasure to work with you. I've enjoyed working with Soulbridge students from all around the world, and we're going to have a very interesting, informative, and stimulating semester together starting today. I want to say that I think, and of course, every professor has their own opinions, but I think that innovation, this course in particular, is maybe one of the most important courses that you take at Soulbridge, and perhaps one of the most important educational experiences in your academic career. That's because innovation, as we'll learn over the course of the semester, is extremely important to success at the individual level, in other words, yourselves, at the company level, obviously business innovation, and then, of course, at the societal level and even human level. Uh, all of you are interested in academic success and in your personal career success. But the innovation is really important, not just for yourselves, which is very good, important motivation, but essential for uh, survival over the centuries, over the millennia, and indeed for the future for everybody. Let's take 2 examples. COVID-19 has been a big challenge. And how do we solve COVID-19? Well, there are all sorts of things like vaccines and quarantines and all sorts of methods, etc. But these methods, technologies, processes, etc., are essentially innovative approaches to change in the world around us. And the change, of course, is that virus, SARS-CoV-2. So we have to innovate to solve that problem. And so innovation is very critical uh, in that case. And that's just one example. Another example, of course, is climate change, global warming, and so forth. That will require innovative solutions to address. And if we don't, of course, that's going to result in tremendous hardship and difficulty for the human species and indeed for the planet. So innovation is extremely important on a global level, and it will also obviously impact on the success of your own careers in the future. So that's why I think that this course about innovation may very well be one of the most important educational experiences in your career. So I talked about importance. The other thing about this course is that it may be one of the most unusual or different experiences in your career. We will be doing some projects, and some of those projects may seem a little strange or a little bit different. We are not going to have any exams, for example, midterm or final exam. We're going to have projects, and we're going to do different things in every lecture and different approaches. Why do I do that? Because it's one thing to lecture about innovation and talk about innovation. It's another thing to actually do innovation. So I'm a very firm believer in not just talking, but also acting and implementing. In other words, this innovation course is an innovation itself. And we will be trying different things and new things as we go along. And so we will be, in a sense, living innovation in this course as well. So it might be a little bit strange. We might be doing some very different things. It might not be your usual type of course, but that's in the spirit of innovation, which is related to obviously adapting and doing things differently for the future. We wouldn't be an innovation course if we weren't doing things innovatively. So that's my philosophy. So we have the motivation is around the importance of innovation, and the process that we will go through will also be innovative. I will talk about some of the practical aspects of the course during the lecture later on, things like grading and textbook and so forth. But at the outset, I want to say that communication is very important. And as you know, we have the LMS system, the smart system, LMS system, and I will be using that, as most of you have already seen. And we'll be sharing the lectures, the Zoom links, the assignments, and so forth. There is an assignment already posted for next week, which we'll talk about. But I also like to use Google Calendar. And in Google Calendar, I've set up all the lectures in my calendar, and I can invite you to that Google Calendar. And I will also be posting the lecture PDFs and the videos and the assignments in the Google Calendar as well. Now, it's a very interesting, you might ask, why do we do that? First of all, Google has a very nice system. It's integrated, it pops up on your phone. You have all the information there. And then, of course, LMS gets shut down after the course is over. So everything is lost. But the Google Calendar, at least for as long as I'm living, I guess, will be there. So you'll still have a resource in terms of the Google Calendar. And I can send messages and so forth that way as well. So I use both LMS and Google Calendar. And one of the important things also in technology is often to have some redundancy or backup plan. So sometimes LMS is down. And in Google Calendar, I've set up a Zoom link, the same as the Zoom for LMS, but I also have Google Meet as a backup in case Zoom is down. So we have, an innovation, if you will, about making sure that we are not stuck with one IT system, and we have some backup so that we don't have any problems going forward. Again, the Google Calendar is not required, but it will be helpful for us going forward. Any questions or thoughts before we start? I share my screen. Anybody have any comments?
Professor,
Yeah.
uh, is the course fully online or are we gonna go to the offline as well?
I believe it will be fully online for this semester.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so the other thing I should mention, and I will mention several times so there can be no complaints, attendance is very important at Soulbridge. And the attendance will be taken by putting your name and number in the chat room. That is automatically recorded and time-stamped when I download it to my computer. And that is what I use to then, not immediately, but a few days later or a week later before the next class, I update the attendance system. So it's very important that you put your name and number in this chat room. If you forget to do that, we cannot go back and you can't say, oh, please look at the lecture, watch the video. You're going to see my face maybe. I can't look through hundreds of hours of video to look for somebody's face. That's not the way we take attendance in this class. That's a matter of process. So please enter your name and number in the chat room. And then I don't immediately update the attendance system because it's not linked to any electronic card or whatever. I have to manually put it in. So don't send me emails about, the attendance wasn't updated today and so forth. That's going to be a waste of time. So I will do that. And please don't worry, so long as you enter your name and number in the chat room as I designated. I think most of you have already done that. Okay, let me share the screen. And I have shared the PDF of this lecture in LMS, and it will also be attached to the Google Calendar as I described. So lecture number 1 is about what is innovation. Essentially, we're going to explore this definition, and we will explore actually that there is not just one kind of innovation, but there's many dimensions or different types of innovation, and we will explore that as well today. Now, you might say this is a useless lecture because all of you know what innovation is. Every time you hear a startup pitch, they say, oh, we're innovative. We're an innovative company. We have an innovative product. I'm an innovative person. And about 90% of that time, or I would say much of that time, most people have no idea what they're talking about. You know, what does it mean to be innovative? We all think we know what it is, but actually the purpose of today's lecture is to really explore what it really means. That's extremely important because obviously if we don't really understand innovation, then we're just wasting our time. And it's very funny. I see these startups and they say, oh, we're innovative. And they don't really understand what innovation is. And of course, that's not very encouraging and inspiring to their future success. So if we really understand what innovation is, that will give us a better chance, of course, of actually being innovative. And sometimes the things in life that seem most obvious actually have the most complicated definitions. And so that's what we're going to explore today. Something that seems simple is actually quite complex. One other thing I should say, this is my Gmail address. You also have my Soulbridge email address. I'm on LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to do that. You can just search for my name. I'm the only one with that name on LinkedIn. I have a number of positions. I'm obviously a professor at Soulbridge. I'm chief science officer at a Canadian material sciences company, and I'll talk about that later. It's an innovative company, and I'll explain that. I also work with Intralink, which is a company that brings innovation to Korea and companies to Korea. I'm a member of the Healthcare Advisory Panel for CREST, which is based in Malaysia. It's a semi-governmental organization that tries to bring innovation in healthcare, digital healthcare in Malaysia. I'm chief marketing officer for a startup in Korea called Eatware that has some innovative solutions to cognitive training and also digital healthcare. I'm a venture partner at the venture firm Yozma Group that works with Israeli and Korean companies, startups. And then I also have a couple other academic appointments at University of Melbourne and at LABA in Italy. And in Italy, I'll be preparing a new kind of course. This is a design university, a course on information design. And so that's another innovation, curricular innovation that I like to do. Now, I don't put all these up here to brag or whatever, but to emphasize that I love to do innovation. I try to be innovative. We're not always successful, of course, but I'm not just speaking to you as an academic. I'm speaking to you as someone who tries to do innovative things in my whole life. I remember from the beginning, and I'll share some stories about the innovation, but I'll also be talking about some of these projects and companies. And so you'll see real life innovation, not just with case studies of, you know, Samsung or General Electric or Pfizer or whatever, not just case studies, but my own experience that I will share with you about innovation. That's the purpose of this. So the course is roughly organized in two parts. The first part will talk about fundamentals and history of innovation. We'll try to understand innovation in terms of the definition, which is for today. Then we'll try to go really deep into a theory of innovation that's ultimately based on biology. So that's very strange and innovative. This is a business school, Soulbridge International School of Business. Why are we talking about biology? Well, first of all, this is an innovation course, so we have to do something different, right? But the reason is, if you look at the world and how life has evolved, not just human beings, but all life forms, you see so many examples of innovation. And perhaps the most powerful example of innovation is indeed biology. And so we want to understand, how does that happen? And those learnings about biology can benefit or inform our own approach to innovation in business. Now, people say, we live in an innovative era. Excuse me. But innovation has been throughout history. And so we want to see how individuals and countries and societies innovated in the past. We'll focus a little bit on Korea as well. We'll talk about innovation scientific method and look at innovation in Silicon Valley, in Israel, and other places currently that are good models of innovation ecosystems. So that's part one. We really understand innovation from all its dimensions, or many of its dimensions. So we'll talk about what is innovation today. Part two is more practical and will be about the methods and applications. And the textbook that we have, well, the textbook is these lecture notes, but the other textbook that we have has a lot of the business applications and systems. We'll talk about those methods of innovation in part two. So let's start with a very quick video, how to be an entrepreneur. I think it should be set up that you can hear it. And if you cannot hear it, please send me a message in the chat room, but I think it should work.
Many of us want to become entrepreneurs. Starting your own business is one of the biggest dreams of our times. But how do you get to be an entrepreneur? Most of the advice focuses on the practicalities, writing a business plan, raising money, finding staff, marketing and PR. We'll go down a different route. In our eyes, at the heart of successful entrepreneurship lies something oddly more abstract, an accurate insight into the causes of human unhappiness. To be an entrepreneur means essentially to become an expert in the things that make life difficult for people. That's because every properly ambitious business is in some way trying to fix things for other people. And the bigger and more original what you're trying to fix happens to be, the more successful your business can be. Because consumer society is now well developed, it may be easy to think that all the big problems out there already have thousands of fixes anyway. Think of all those car companies or pizza outlets or news websites. We surely have enough of everything. What could we possibly add to what's already out there? But to get a sense of the vast opportunities that still remain in capitalism, all you need to do is ask yourself where and in what areas you're unhappy in the course of an average day. Every unhappiness is really a new business waiting to be born. Your frustrations are a nearly inexhaustible source of raw materials out of which the businesses of the future can be built. So while there may already be plenty of breakfast cereals and t-shirts and cell phones and cab rides for sale, there's so much more that frustrates and depresses us. Think of how difficult it is to get on with one's partner, educate children, cope with anxiety, discover what you want to do with your life, find a nice place to live, calm down in the evening. One could go on and on. Our griefs and irritations are endless, thankfully for the budding entrepreneurs. The biggest first step to take towards entrepreneurship is therefore to learn to study your own unhappiness and what might possibly heal it for you and others. When profits decline in businesses, It's really the result of too many people throwing themselves at trying to fix the same area because they can't think of anything more innovative to do, rather than start a new airline, mobile phone company, or supermarket chain. And by contrast, healthy profits are a reward for understanding and mastering an area of human distress ahead of anyone else. Of course, ideas aren't enough on their own. You need to take care of practicalities and money, but they won't help you if your original psychological insight into human unhappiness isn't sound. And by the same token, if your insight into what makes people unhappy is razor sharp, and your solutions bold, then however difficult the journey, your business will stand a high chance of making money and benefiting humanity too.
Okay, so that was the interesting video. But does anyone want to take a guess why I included that video in the beginning part of this lecture or this course? The basic concept is if we identify and are sensitive to our unhappiness,
Sir?
we can then transform that into business opportunity. What is the deeper meaning of
Sir?
why I shared this concept?
Because all successful entrepreneurs are innovative.
Anyone have a guess? There's no right answer to
Yeah,
what
sir.
I asked.
Sir, can you hear me?
Okay, so what I will say is this is very interesting. They didn't say, okay, in order to, be a good entrepreneur, you have to make a nice business plan, you have to have a good strategy, you have to, know some good venture capital people, you have to have a marketing plan, or, all these sorts of things. They didn't talk about that. They talked about being sensitive to your unhappiness. That's very interesting and strange because unhappiness is an emotional state and sensitivity is a kind of way of looking at things, kind of mindset. And the reason I mention this is ultimately everything that I talk about in this innovation course, the methods, the techniques, the examples, the case studies, read the whole book cover to cover. And maybe, you get an A+. You do all the assignments, but if you don't have the right mindset and emotional kind of passion, you will not be innovative. That's the message that I get from this video that I wanted to share. So in other words, think about my position as a professor. I can just share a bunch of techniques and tricks and whatever for innovation, but that won't make you innovative. So my job should be to share a mindset and to change your emotional outlook. That's not so easy. I mean, I can't be your psychiatrist, right? I'm your professor. But at the same rate, if I don't do my job of sharing this innovation and I don't share the mindset and the passion and the emotional commitment to innovation, then, this course will not be successful. So one of the purposes of this course and the assignments that I share that you do at the end of the course is to have the right mindset and to develop that kind of mindset. That's another reason why I shared my background. I'm not innovative in everything, but I definitely have a mindset to be innovative. I definitely have a passion for finding things that are not working so well, that's the unhappiness, and trying to fix them. I'm not comfortable with the existing situation. I am only comfortable if we are constantly improving and doing better. That's my mindset. So one of the purposes or missions of this course will be to share that mindset. Now, here's a quote from Siemens. Siemens is the famous German conglomerate engineering company. They do many things in energy, in medical technology, infrastructure, IT, and so forth. And Siemens writes, innovation is our lifeblood. And you see this a lot in corporations, companies, they try to get the employees to be innovative. They give lectures and they have slogans and they have mission statements and so forth. But they often fail because they can't transmit that kind of passion. So I have to figure out a way to innovatively transmit that passion. So this is not just a slogan and you go and say, oh, Professor Gurel said, we should be innovative. And then I'm just going to go back and do the regular old thing. I got my A+ and that's fine. That's a failure, even though you might have gotten A+. But if you go and say, wow, I want to change the world. I want to everything, really kind of make new and see ways to make that happen and so forth, and living and breathing this kind of innovation, just like Siemens says, in our lifeblood, then that will be successful. And that's what we're going to try to do in this semester. So what is innovation? I recognize a few students here, so I would ask that they wait on answering this because they may know the answer. So we'll ask some of the newer students, what is innovation? Anybody want to start giving their opinion?
Something out of the box, thinking out of the box.
Remember, participation counts in this class. It doesn't mean everybody has to be super aggressive, but those people who are more involved have a better chance of doing better.
Professor?
So anyone want to start?
Professor?
Oh, I cannot hear you for some reason. Oh, you're right. Sorry about that. How about now?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
To make life easier?
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem, sir.
So who's talking now?
Polat Baran.
For some reason, it's not showing up in my... Okay, who is talking?
Polat Baran.
Okay, for some reason, your picture is not coming up. Okay, here we go. Okay, go ahead.
So I said that innovation was to make life easier, to solve daily life problems.
So innovation is make life easier for daily life problems. Okay. Anybody else?
Okay, I would.
Augustine.
Augstein. It's a
Augustine, sorry.
German name.
Yeah.
I would say innovation is the process of using new ideas to address current issues like frustration you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
So basically, I mean, frustration wouldn't appear if there's a solution for this emotion. Therefore, you have to use new ways, maybe uncontroversial ways to address these emotions.
Okay. Sounds good. New ways of, and then Anastasia says new ways of solving old new problems. I think all of these are good, but actually all of you are missing one key component. What do you think that is? So I'll give you an example. What's the difference between innovation and a new idea?
I guess that innovation can be a product or service implemented into the market, while idea is just on the kind of development level.
Can you say it again?
Innovation is more about like a new product or service.
New product or service.
Yes,
This is
which
Veronica.
market.
So all of you are many of you are using the word new. And of course, innovation has a newness to it, but there's something special about innovation that goes beyond newness.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, innovation, sir, it includes the original inventions, like something that never did before.
So something never did before.
It's an original thing. Yeah, it's an original idea, original thing.
Professor, can I add?
Yeah, Garam.
So I think basically the difference with really new products from innovation is that it's like innovation is like a process that it is renewing an existing or current product or service in a way that it creates new value to the system. Like it shows new processes and new techniques or establishing like successful ideas.
Okay, I think Garam said something interesting about value. So many of you mentioned the word new, and in fact, you can have innovation that happens, and we'll talk about it during this lecture, without anything new. In fact, that sounds a little strange. How can you have innovation without anything new? But we will talk about how that's possible.
Professor, can I add?
And then Garam said about value. So there's lots of new ideas, but if they don't create a value, then it's not an innovation. So that's why there's innovation is not equal to newness. One, because we can have innovation without new things, which sounds strange, but we will talk about that. And two, because there are many new things that don't create value, and hence they're not innovation. That's why I told you about these startups that go and say we're innovative, but that they're just saying we have a new idea. They've done nothing. They haven't created any value. How can it be innovative, right? So innovation involves this value aspect, and we're going to talk about that. Now, you might say, "Oh, that's just a technical definition. That's kind of tricky, or that's not really helpful, and so forth." But this concept is extremely important because if you want to end up being innovative, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, whatever, then you have to think about not just coming up with the new ideas, but creating that value. And that's where actually a lot of the business stuff comes in. How do you create that value? Well, you create business structures, you do finance, you do accounting, you bring all that together to make that new idea or old idea in a new setting into a reality. So let's explore. Thank you very much for this.
Yes.
Let's explore a little bit more about this definition. So a number of business people, Howell and Higgins, business consultants, business gurus, Peter Drucker, you might have heard about, Luca and Katz have given some definitions of innovation. So Howell and Higgins says the process by which entrepreneurs convert opportunities into marketable ideas. I don't like this definition because it just focuses on entrepreneurs. You can have innovation in scientists, in artists, you can have innovation in government, and it's not just about entrepreneurs. And then Peter Drucker also talks about specific instrument of entrepreneurs, how they exploit change as an opportunity for different business or different service. That sounds very operational. It doesn't speak to some of the passion aspects of innovation that we mentioned. And then this is probably closer, although it's a little bit long, so I don't like it so much. Innovation is generally understood as the successful introduction of a new thing or method, the embodiment, combination, or synthesis of knowledge in a original, relevant, valued new product, processes, or service. So again, these are all very official definitions. I should say by official, by leading thinkers and so forth, but I still don't find them very satisfying. And that just highlights how this definition is very challenging and difficult and not always easy to pin down. It's not obvious. I find that when understanding something is a challenge, I like to do a visual diagram of the concept. So visual diagrams or mind maps, or however you want to call it, can be very useful in exploring such a definition. So here's one such visual diagram. We have three parts. What is possible with a certain technology? What is viable in the marketplace? So this is the technical issue. This is the market issue. And then what is desirable to users? This would be the human issue. So technology, market, human. And that intersection of all three of those is innovation. So we talked about new idea. What if the new idea could work in the market? People like it, but there's no technology to do the idea. So for example, the concept that we can fly faster than the speed of light and go around the world in a fraction of a second, like Star Trek style. It's not possible. So that's not innovation. What if we have some really cool technology to solve, lots of problems, but it's just too expensive? So that's a really cool idea, great technology in the laboratory, but not viable in the marketplace. And again, that will not be innovation. So this approaches an idea that innovation is equal to invention. Invention is the newness of an idea or new idea, and the commercialization or actualization of that idea. I'll give you an example in this course. I have an idea that I want this course to be new and different and inventive. I want this course to not just be old style course. I can just have that idea, but unless I actually deliver it, and I have the opportunity to deliver it, which is my privilege to do that with you in this semester, then it's not going to become a real phenomena. And by actually doing the course and by implementing it, then I can say that I've been innovative with respect to this course. And so I'll be testing different ideas and so on and so forth, doing different things. But unless I actually do it and make it happen, then it's not innovation. So actually this afternoon, I teach another course at Soulbridge called the Innovation through the Integration of Science and Art. That course is also designed to be innovative, and it will be the first time that I'll be teaching it. And it is a first time in the world, perhaps, where you have a course that combines science and art and humanities at the same time. That's going to be innovation. I hope it will work out, but we're going to try to be innovative for that afternoon course. Again, I can just dream about having that course. I can just dream about this idea, but until I commercialize it, and by commercializing, I don't necessarily mean selling it or whatever, but actually implement it in a real setting, in a human society, in the world, then it's not innovation. So this is a better sense of innovation. And this is actually from the textbook, Tid and Besant. It comes from Change, and the most helpful definition of innovation, the process of creating value from ideas. Now notice I don't necessarily put new ideas. They can be old ideas. So it's a little bit more complicated, but this concept of having the invention leading to innovation by virtue of becoming reality. And this is where the passion really comes in. This is where the mindset really comes in, because you can have, lots of people have new ideas. You know, I'm sure there are people exactly had similar ideas to Elon Musk, but some, you know, make it happen and other people don't make it happen. And the mindset is extremely important to come up with those new ideas and to, you know, drive it to reality. So this is the definition of innovation, the process of creating value from ideas. Now, again, you might say, oh, that's not so important. That's obvious. But these words entail a lot of, or have a lot of implications. How do you create that value? How do you convert those ideas into reality? And that's a, you know, very complicated process. And that's where you bring together all your business education. Innovation is kind of an integrative course. You bring in strategy, you bring in finance, you bring in marketing, you bring in production, supply chain, logistics. All of these come together in order to fully realize the innovation. So here's another video about why innovate. Why is it important? That's an important question that we're going to explore in the course. I've already given you some reasons: climate change, COVID, the rise and fall of empires depended on innovation. So I think it's very clear, but I think it's important to reiterate some of these messages. So let's start again with this.
Capture, and I've used the term capture rather than, I can't remember the light bulb one now, did I have success or something, or question mark, is because the idea is to create and capture some benefit. And I use the term benefit or value rather than profit or growth, because organizations have different motives for innovating. Yeah, some want to make lots of money, some want to grow very quickly, some don't want to do either of those. If you look at entrepreneurial startups, I can't remember the exact figure, but it's something like 96% are lifestyle businesses. I said that with some disdain, didn't I? I shouldn't have said that. Let's try it again. 96% are lifestyle businesses, yeah. People do it because they want autonomy and control, or they've got no other options, frankly, yeah? But we tend to think of startups as entrepreneurial and growth and innovative. They're not. Around about 4% are any of those things, yeah? And they're very different to the other 96%, okay? So why you're innovating, what is your goal in terms of end value utility? It's really, 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 really important, because it has to filter back to where you look and what types of things you pursue and select, okay? So this is important in the sense it does feed back to here, and it does feed back to where you look for solutions and such like, okay? So I am not drawing all those arrows back, they're given. But really they are motivated by what is the goal? Why are you innovating? Is it to save lives? Is it to make money? Yeah. Is it to dominate the world? Is it several of these things? Okay, so a very important part to be managed. And in that there are two separate sets of activities. One is the creation of value. How does this innovation create value? It's the same question we asked in the other session, didn't it? It might do these fancy things in terms of function, but who would value that? How does it create value? That's the more naive question. And then a separate question, which is hardly ever asked, is how might we capture some of that value? And you see so many cases where the two are disconnected that you figured out, okay, that segment or application will create some value and we can talk to those guys and create a product. And they don't think until it's far too late about how can we actually appropriate some value from that transaction? In the horrible terms of internet startups, how do we monetize it? But it's not just about monetization. How do we capture any value from it? And when you get dislocation from the creation of value from innovation and its capture, what do you think happens?
Do you think there is a difference between, the innovation of a product and innovation of a service?
Yes. Do you want a more? Yes, there is. Yeah.
What is the key difference between the two? In terms of service, it's more like an ecosystem.
No, yeah, maybe we'll discuss it in the next session when we look at the blurring of that distinction. Yeah, I think you're right. They're different. Partly because services can have tangibles and intangibles. They can have product and process, but most products are more about product by definition. What is delivered rather than how it's delivered. But yes, you're right. They're different. They're different. But products can have ecosystems, as we'll see when we look in this session with Apple and Android. So I don't think that's the big distinction. But you're dead right. They're very different entities. But what we will say, the warning against, if you have a disconnect between the creation of value from innovation and how you capture some benefit from that. Why? What happens next if you fail to connect those two things up?
You don't learn exponentially.
Yeah, true. You don't learn. Well, most organisations don't learn. I mean, they just sort of have a success and they pat themselves on the back and appear on TV and then fall on their face. Or they have a failure and then they blame the wrong things. They blame the team rather than the timing or something. So. Okay, yeah, some other company could come in and benefit, and that happens, I'm afraid, in innovation. Sometimes you don't get it right and another company will benefit from your mistakes. That's a given. But more fundamentally, what...
You run out of resources.
Yes, you will run out of resources because you're not capturing value to rejuvenate. More fundamentally, innovation stops. How dramatic can that be? It does, it stops. And whether you look at companies who do it, whether you look at countries who do it, if you look at business sectors who do it, where you disconnect the creation of value through innovation and capture some of that benefit, the incentive and the resources to innovate are no longer available. And after one or two iterations, innovation doesn't happen. So you get whole economies and whole sectors where innovation just doesn't really happen because you have that disconnect. So one of the tricks here, whether you're an entrepreneur trying to figure out how do I make this thing fly, or whether you're a policymaker saying how do I make this region or country grow again, is to try to reconnect that. So you align the incentives in terms of, well, if people are successful in terms of innovation and create value, there should be some mechanism that they can capture some of that value to reinvest and hopefully learn for the next cycle. But the default is often a disconnect. Those who benefit didn't create, and those who create don't benefit very much. And it all breaks down really quickly.
From a practical point of view, one of the problems I see is that capturing the benefits can take a very long time. And it's not like you've done your innovation, you've found the innovation, et cetera, and capturing is not, okay, just sending it out to, let's say it's a product, taking it out to the market, because maybe it'll take you 5 years to get all the benefits. So what happens in terms of the overall innovation process? In the meantime, you just concentrate on capturing those, or there's a few different things happening at different times?
Yeah.
That's very complicated.
But you're dead right, And we talk about, it's one of these, either we talk, you think we saw it in the last session or the next session, but we will talk about in the next session about capturing value, because that's what it's all about, really. But to answer your question, you're dead right. You've identified a common failing of product-based, particularly startups, is they figure out sort of how they're going to develop it, maybe get their first customer, maybe their first product, but they don't think beyond that. And then everything dries up in terms of resources, unless they're in biotech and they just have another round of funding and a party. But outside biotech, I think we have no income. Yeah? and often they cease to exist, or there's a trade sale and the original managers are put to one side, and the bigger companies then sit out the thing. And that's quite a sad story. But that's an example of a disconnect. It's the group that developed it don't directly benefit. There might be a trade sale, but they might not. Yeah, that's why a pure product-based strategy is really a bad idea in most cases, whatever the lead time. So when we talk about things like licensing, joint ventures, often you need a sort of wider repertoire of how you capture value from that. Otherwise, if you rely on products, well, I mean, it's a bit like the, you can tell we're getting philosophical now, it's a bit like these sort of explanations for the beginning of the universe. It's really easy to explain what happens after the first billionth of a second. It's reinforcing, but what happened before that is really hard. In terms of bootstrapping, that's the problem. You're right. When you have several products or innovations, then the last 2 or 3 are paying for the next one. That's easier to maintain. But how do you bootstrap that? And that's the interesting one we'll talk about later. Okay, so by model we mean we're simplifying it, but what we're doing is trying to isolate and distill things that we know should be managed and can be managed to improve the outcome. Yeah, that's what we're saying. We're not saying that captures all of reality, but we're saying it captures more than the essence, and more importantly, things that we know empirically make a difference. Okay?
Okay. So that was interesting. The concept that one needs to capture value in order to facilitate innovation is the flip side. So in other words, I had mentioned that innovation should create value, but value also, by capturing that value, like you mentioned, also facilitates innovation. So what becomes very interesting is you get a cycle where you innovate and create value, and then by capturing that value, you innovate more. And this is where you get successful companies, successful individuals, and failed companies and not successful individuals and countries. Because this becomes a cycle, a positive feedback loop that creates that kind of success. Of course, if you don't have the mindset and you don't have systems to innovate on top of that value, then if you don't have the mindset, then you're not going to take advantage of that cycle, that positive feedback loop. But if you have that mindset, which is the purpose of this course, then you get into that cycle and you generate a lot of success. So we look at Apple, we look at Google, we look at all these companies, they're constantly innovating and then using that innovation to capture value, using that innovation to create value, and then using that value to then create more innovation and that positive feedback loop. So we mentioned the definition of innovation to create value, but it's also very important to realize that capturing that value can cause more innovation, because that's the bigger meta cycle, as it were. So many people talk about creativity and innovation. So creativity, or another word for it is invention, is thinking up new ideas, new things, and innovation is doing new things. So I think this is a good summary of the concept that we're talking about. So General Electric is a very interesting company. It came out of Thomas Edison, who we will look at later in the lecture. Most of you are familiar with, the American inventor. That was the company he founded. And General Electric, goes up and down, has successes, etc. And as a conglomerate, even though General Electric is originally founded on the basis of electricity as a technology, it is more about a cultural mindset, a business mindset. And what in the past, and it's a little bit more difficult now, but has made General Electric successful, is their management training aspect, their management development aspect. So they go into any business or many businesses. They have aircraft engines, they have medical technology, they have energy solutions, they have light bulbs, and etc. Make nuclear reactors and many things. They have a management training program that focuses on their leadership and their management, and they focus on the innovation part of that. And so in a way, they have what we will call organizational innovation. And that's a very important topic. In other words, how do you make your company, your organization innovative? We cannot predict innovations, but if we have a structure, if we have a mindset, and if we have a system that can be supporting innovation, that's a very powerful business tool. And those are things we're going to explore in the lecture or the course as well. So we're going to take a break, but we've defined innovation as being more than just a new idea. We defined innovation as a new idea implemented in reality, or old ideas in new ways implemented in reality. The next part of the lecture, after our break, we'll talk about different kinds of innovation. Product innovation, process innovation, business model or service innovation, which was mentioned in the short video clip before. Disruptive innovation, some of you may have heard of that term. Incremental innovation, closed innovation, open innovation, traditional innovation, reverse innovation, and finally, as we were talking about, organizational innovation. So as you can see, innovation is not just one word, one idea. There are actually many dimensions to innovation. And the purpose of the next part of this lecture will be to explore these different parts of innovation. Any questions so far? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Professor.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. So let's take a break. We will return at 10:15. Okay.